is a moral transmutation of the inner man. When they say, die before ye die, they do not mean to assert that the lower self can be essentially destroyed, but that it can and should be purged of its attributes, which are wholly evil. These attributes, ignorance, pride, envy, and uncharitableness, and etc., are extinguished and replaced by the opposite qualities when the will is surrendered to God and when the mind is concentrated on Him. Therefore, dying to self is really living in God. The mystical aspects of the doctrine thus stated will occupy a considerable part of the following chapters. Here, we are mainly interested in its ethical import. The Sufi who has eradicated self-will is said, in technical language, to have reached the stages of acquiescence or satisfaction, rida, and trust in God, tawakkul. A dervish fell into the Tigris. Seeing that he could not swim, a man on the bank cried out, shall I tell someone to bring you ashore? No, said the dervish. Then do you wish to be drowned? No. What then do you wish? The dervish replied, God's will be done. What have I to do with wishing? Trust in God in its extreme form involves the renunciation of every personal initiative and volition, totally passive, like that of a corpse in the hands of the washer who prepares it for burial. Perfect indifference towards anything that is even remotely connected with oneself. A special class of the ancient Sufis took their name from this trust, which they applied so far as they were able to matters of everyday life. For instance, they would not seek food, work for hire, practice any trade, or allow medicine to be given them when they were ill. Quietly, they committed themselves to God's care, never doubting that He to whom belonged the treasures of earth and heaven would provide for their wants, and their allotted portion would come to them as surely as it comes to the birds, which neither sow nor reap, and to the fish in the sea, and to the child in the womb. These principles depend ultimately on the sophistic theory of the divine unity, as is shown by Shakak of Balkh in the following passage. There are three things which a man is bound to practice. Whosoever neglects any one of them must needs neglect them all, and whosoever cleaves to any one of them must needs cleave to them all. Strive, therefore, to understand and consider heedfully. The first is this, that with your mind and your tongue and your actions you declare God to be one, and that, having declared Him to be one, and having declared that none benefits you or harms you except Him, you devote all your actions to Him alone. If you act a single jot of your actions for the sake of another, your thought and speech are corrupt, since your motive in acting for another's sake must be hope or fear, and when you act from hope or fear of other than God, who is the Lord and the sustainer of all things, you've taken to yourself another God to honor and venerate. Well, not quite, Secondly, that while you speak and act in the sincere belief that there is no God except Him, you should trust Him more than the world, or money, or uncle, or father, or mother, or anyone in the face of the earth. Thirdly, when you've established these two things, namely sincere belief in the unity of God and trust in Him, it behooves you to be satisfied with Him, and not to be angry on account of anything that vexes you. Beware of anger. Let your heart be with Him always. Let it not be withdrawn from Him for a single moment. The trusting Sufi has no thought beyond the present hour. On one occasion, Shaktik asked those who sat listening to his discourse, if God causes you to die today, think that He will demand from you the prayers of tomorrow. They answered, no. How should He demand from us the prayers of a day on which we are not alive? Shaktik said, even as He will not demand from you the prayers of tomorrow, so do ye not seek from Him the preventer of tomorrow. It may be that ye will not live so long. In view of the practical consequences of attempting to live on trust, it is not surprising to read the advice given to those who had perfectly fulfilled the doctrine. Let them dig a grave and bury themselves. Later Sufis hold that active exertion for the purposes of obtaining the means of subsistence is quite compatible with trust, according to the saying of the Prophet, trust in God and tie the camel's leg. They define tawakkul as a habitual state of mind which is impaired only by self-pleasing thoughts. For example, it was accounted a breach of trust to think paradise a more desirable place than hell. Well, that's automatic, but you know, um, perhaps having one more the motivation than the other. What type of character is such a theory likely to produce? At the worst, a useless drone and hypocrite preying upon his fellow creatures. At the best, a harmless dervish who remains unmoved in the midst of sorrow, meets praise and blame with equal indifference, and accepts insults, blows, torture, and death as mere incidents in the eternal drama of destiny.